everybody, welcome to today's session. So we're going to begin with the communication skills training for today as a part of the ESC program. So what we covered in the last session was the basics of communication, where I spoke about the fundamentals. In today's session, I'm going to recap certain aspects of communication tree. So we looked at certain myths and realities in terms of communication cycle. I explained to you what does that mean. So let's take a quick look at the communication tree. So when we talk about the tree, the first thing that we need is a language. Now the language is broken into sentences. Now these sentences exists in every language. Whichever language we speak about, there is a language that is broken into sentences. And here we are speaking specifically about oral communication. Now the sentences are broken into words, and we usually think the words are broken into letters. This is again a myth that we need to get rid of. Since we are speaking about oral communication, the words are not broken into letters, they are broken into sound. When we speak about oral communication, this is a face-to-face communication when one person is talking to another person or one person is talking to more than one person. So it could be one to one or one to many. The medium can be anything. It doesn't really matter. Should it be face-to-face? It can be over the telephone. It can be a speech. For example, the Prime Minister's message that comes like Man Ki Baat, he records the speech and that is beamed on television or on radio. When there is a news that you're watching, certain segment of the news is live, but certain segment or majority of it is not live. It's recorded and it's played after that. So when we talk about any of these communication which is oral in nature, we are hearing it. And when we hear, we don't hear the letters. We hear the sentences which can be broken into words, but words are not broken into letters, they are broken into sounds. Now this fundamental aspect of words being broken into sounds is what pronunciation is all about. So let me repeat what pronunciation is. So pronunciation refers to the way in which we make the sound of words. It also means creating correct sounds using the muscles of our mouth, tongue and lips, etc. There are other important aspects of pronunciation. We looked at certain examples of word stress, where we emphasize on certain syllables in a word, where the emphasis is on certain syllables. We looked at sentence stress, where the emphasis is on certain words in a sentence. Linking, we looked at certain examples, joining certain words together. Intonation, the rise and fall of our voice as we speak. I gave you certain examples for intonation as well. Now, why should we focus on the pronunciation as a first fundamental pillar of communication? Let me show you certain example. I'm going to type certain words and I'm going to break it down to sounds. This is to demonstrate why pronunciation is very important. Okay. Now, I have a word which is sir, right? Now, this particular word is pronounced as sir. Now, this is a vowel sound. You will understand what a vowel sound is very soon. It's sir, or r, sir. This is how we are supposed to pronounce. Now, if you go in India, if you go down south in southern part of the country, the pronunciation changes of this word. Majority of the people pronounce the word sir as sar. Sir, can you please answer my question? So instead of saying sir, they say sar. So this is a pronunciation mistake. Now how do we identify it's a pronunciation mistake? Instead of a vowel sound they end up using a vowel sound a. Another example, the word is class and the pronunciation is k, l, a, s, class. This is how the pronunciation is. But people make a mistake. They say k, l, o, s. Instead of saying class, they end up pronouncing this as class. Okay. Now, why does this happen? It happens because of one fundamental issue that we call as regional influence. So let me quickly show you what do we mean by that. So we have two fundamental problems in English language when we speak. One is mother tongue influence. The second one is regional influence. People usually mistake the mother tongue influence as a pronunciation issue, but it's not a pronunciation issue. It's actually a regional influence issue. So whatever problem that we face in terms of incorrect pronunciation, it's because of regional influence. The reason it's a regional influence, because every region has a particular language and a dialect, and the sound pattern of that particular language and dialect impacts a third language or second language, which is English. Now, what do we mean by mother tongue influence? Mother tongue influence is something that impacts grammar. For example, there is a sentence, lot of people, for example, I'm supposed to reach a particular meeting at 4 o'clock, but I was 20 minutes late, and they ask me, why are you late? And my response is, I came late. Why? Because I did not get a cab, or I did not get an auto rickshaw, or my bus was late. So what do I say? I reached late. Why? Because I could not get a cab on time. This why because is a wrong usage in English language. There is a Telugu word which is yendukante. So we do a direct translation from that word to English and we say why because. Now why and because cannot be together because one of the word which is why is a redundancy. The same thing applies to this particular example. I can able to come at 4 p.m. Can you able to come at 4 p.m.? Now this is wrong. Can and able cannot be together because they mean the same. So the correct form is I can come at 4 p.m. and the question is, can you come at 4 p.m.? So the word able is not necessary, it's redundancy. Now when you have a word which is redundancy, what happens is it leads to grammatical issues. That is what mother tongue influence is all about. We do a transliteration. Transliteration basically means literal translation. We do a literal translation from our vernacular language to English language, and that leads to a grammar problem. For example, a lot of us ask this question when we meet for the first time. We ask, what's your good name? Now, what do we mean by good name? That doesn't mean the person also has a bad name. In India, culturally speaking, a person's name could be Srinivas, but at home, his friends or family calls him Srinu. So when they say, what's your good name? They basically mean what is the name which is mentioned in your resume or in your certificate. That is what good name is. But in English language, it can be either good or bad, which doesn't mean the person has a bad name as such. So that is what mother tongue influence is all about, where we think in a particular language, a vernacular language, and we do a direct translation to English, and that leads to grammar issue. But here we are speaking about sounds, we are speaking about pronunciation. When we speak about pronunciation, we are supposed to talk about regional influence. In every part of India, like I said, there is a language, there is dialect. So the pronunciation pattern of that particular language or dialect influences English language sounds when we speak. And that is why if you go to certain part of the country, they pronounce the same words differently. For example, if I have a word which is America, if you go to North India, especially Punjab, Chandigarh, Delhi and all that, now the correct pronunciation is, if I have to break it down to syllables, America. So there are 4 syllables, America. Now in northern part of the country, they pronounce this as Rica. So they drop a syllable. Instead of saying America, they say I'm going to America. For example, the word which is school, there are 2 syllables, school. But in places like UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, they add another syllable. They pronounce this as school. Wherever there is a word that starts with the s sound, they add a e in front. So instead of saying school, they say school. Something like this happens here as well. For example, the word student, instead of saying student, lot of people pronounce this as student. So they add sh, they start it with sh instead of s. So how do we correct these problems? Now some of it comes because of the influences around us. This is how our teachers taught us in school. Unfortunately, even they did not know what is the correct pronunciation. When they keep talking with a wrong pronunciation, we all think that is the right pronunciation because they are the teachers, obviously they know the best and they are accurate and perfect. So we end up thinking that this is how the word is actually pronounced, but that is not the fact. Now why this entire pronunciation aspect is important? It's because it can lead to confusion when you are speaking to someone. There is a shift of sound that can happen, and that is what we need to eliminate. Let me show you certain examples of sound shift, why it can lead to a problem. I have a word which is leave and another word which is live. Okay. Now in case if you are watching something live on television, the same spelling is used, L-I-V-E, but the pronunciation changes to live instead of live. So I have leave, then I have live. If I have to break this down, the first one is L, E, V. The second one is L, I, V. So this E is something where the difference is. So here I say E, here I say E. Lot of people make this mistake, they interchange, they swap it, and that's where it leads to a problem. So if I have to speak a sentence, I want leave for 2 days as I am, let me correct the alignment. I want leave for 3 days as I am traveling to Mumbai. I used to live there. So please pay attention to how I am pronouncing. I want to leave for, I want a leave for 3 days as I am traveling to Mumbai. I used to live there. So this is live, this is leave. Now if I interchange the sound, now here I am talking about oral communication, and I interchange the sound and I end up saying I want to live for 3 days as I am traveling to Mumbai. I used to leave there. It's not I used to leave there, I used to live there. So that's a sound shift when you end up doing, it's a problem. Some people have the problem of a j and z. For example, page. So instead of saying page, they pronounce this as pays. Instead of pronouncing zone, they pronounce this as zone. Now zone is different. Zone doesn't work. There is no such word. There is no such word as pays as well. Okay. So when you make these mistakes, it's difficult to understand what exactly the person is talking about. Another example, there is a word which is must. Must means you should. They replace the second sound so this is must, they say mast. Now mast means the top portion of a ship or a boat. Both are two different words. So when you make a mistake like this, it leads to understanding issue, comprehension issue. The best example that I can talk about in terms of influences is this particular word. Please pay attention to what I am saying. Now, what is the pronunciation of this word? There are two pronunciations which people usually say. One is schedule. Schedule. We can pronounce this as schedule. Let me change the color so that you can understand. You can either pronounce this as schedule, or some people pronounce this as schedule. So either you say schedule or you say schedule. Now let me tell you what is the correct pronunciation. In order to understand what is the correct pronunciation, you need to understand the influences and you need to understand the origin. Now English language primarily, we learned it from the British. So there is Victorian English and there is other English which is American English. Today the influences that you see, the way we speak, is primarily the impact of American English. But since we were ruled by British, we learn English from them, we are not very sure which one to use where. Now both their pronunciations are different for a lot of words. Let me show you the same word as an example for this. So when I have a word which is schedule, if I have to look at British pronunciation, now let me change the color so that you can identify what do I mean by this. The British pronunciation is schedule and American pronunciation is schedule. And this is a fact a lot of people don't understand. So the British pronunciation is schedule, the American pronunciation is schedule. Now in India, what we are doing is we are taking half of American pronunciation and we are taking half of British pronunciation, and we end up pronouncing this as schedule. This is where we go wrong because of the influences without understanding the root of it, without understanding the origin of it or the structure of it. Now how do we understand, or how do we make sure that we understand the sounds properly and we do not make any kind of pronunciation mistakes? So what do I need to do, and what do I need to do to correct this? In order to do that, we need to understand what do we mean by sound. We know what is a pronunciation in terms of definition, but why is it different? Why is it difficult to get the correct sound in English language? We need to look at certain examples so that I can demonstrate that to you. Okay. Now I have a word here. Let's try this quick example. I have a word which is city. Okay. And I have another word which is cat. So we have city and we have cat. Now pay attention very closely. Now what is common between these two words? The first letter, of course. Both the words starts with the letter C. But when I look at the first word city and when I look at the second word cat, there is a fundamental difference in terms of pronunciation. Another example, we have giraffe starting with G. It's not giraffe, it's giraffe. And we have a word which is gadget. Here again, G and G, both the words starts with the same letter. But the fundamental difference is, when we have the word city, we can replace the word the letter C with a S. Even if I have S, I can pronounce this as city. There will be a spelling mistake, but the sound will be accurate. The same thing applies to cat. I can replace the letter C with a K and I can pronounce this as cat, which means the first letter, even though the letter is C, it carries the function of S, and when I have the letter C again, it carries the function of a K, cat. But if I use K and S, there will be spelling mistakes, but as far as the pronunciation is concerned, both are accurate. Likewise, in giraffe, it starts with a J sound and gadget starts with a G sound. Alright. So, even though the first letter is identical and same, but the sound is different. So, what do we understand from this? When we talk about sound, the same letter can carry two different sounds. That's why you got to be very, very careful when you speak in English language, when you understand the sound. Why does this happen? That the same letter carries different sound. For example, PUT is put, but BUT is but. So, it's different, right? It happens in English language. It's because the language itself is a non-phonetic language. Please remember, English is a non-phonetic language. To understand what is phonetic, let's quickly read. Some languages are phonetic. That means you can look at a written word and know how to pronounce it. Or you can hear a word and know how to spell it. So, there is a direct relationship between spelling and sound. However, English is not a phonetic language, it's a non-phonetic language. That's why what you say is not what you spell. So, I can have two words starting with the same letters, but the pronunciation is different, since English is a non-phonetic language. Now, compare English language with any other language, say for example Telugu, Kannada, Punjabi, Marathi, Hindi, any language for that matter. Whatever you write, you say the same thing. The pronunciation is same as the spelling. But in English, it is different because it's a non-phonetic language. Now, in order to understand how do we determine what is the correct pronunciation, you need to understand the sounds. Now, what do we mean by sounds? How do we master it? Now, quick information I am giving you as a last part of this program, and tomorrow I will give it to you in detail. In order to understand the sounds perfectly, you need to understand the sound structure, and there are two kind of sounds. One is consonant sound and the second one is vowel sounds. Now, what do we mean by consonant and vowel? So, if you look at this particular example, let me go back to my slide. You see this particular part, or let me make it simple for you. Okay. Now, what do we have here? We have A, B, C, D and so on and so forth. So, we have all the alphabet system here. So, all the letters. So, what happens is, when you have these letters in front of you, we are looking at it as the alphabet system. It's not alphabets, it's alphabet. Alright. So, how many do we have? We have 26. Now, something that you need to understand, this is something which we read in our or studied in our school. Let me change this a little bit. Yes. So, we have 26 letters in English alphabet system, out of which we have 21 consonants and the remaining 5 are vowels. So 21 plus 5 is 26. But these are letters, these are not sounds. Okay? So in English language we have 21 consonants and 5 vowels, but you need to understand in terms of sound. Let me change this color so that you can differentiate. We have 24 consonant sounds and we fundamentally have 15 vowel sounds. Now this 15 vowel sounds are divided into 3. There could be more, but for quick understanding and for practical purposes we talk about only 3 kind of vowel sounds. So we have 24 consonant sounds and 15 vowel sounds. Your entire pronunciation is within the circle of 24 plus 15. If you pronounce a word which is beyond or which is out of this 24 and 15, that means you are making a pronunciation mistake. There are a lot of sounds which does not exist in English language. Say for example bh, say for example jh. These sounds you will not find any word where these sounds exists. Now what are the sound that we have in English language? To understand that, we need to get started with the consonant sound principles. There are 24 consonant sounds and tomorrow I'll talk about these sounds in detail. Please remember, once we finish consonant sounds, we need to understand the vowel sounds. We will do a lot of practice with these sounds. Then we need to understand syllable and syllable stress. Once you finish this, you will understand how you had been mispronouncing a lot of words and what is the correct pronunciation. If you're watching this on YouTube, I want you to do me a favor and most importantly do yourself a favor. Whatever words you find it difficult to pronounce and you don't know the pronunciation, how to say it, please post those words in the comment section. Tomorrow's session I will tell you how the pronunciation is and I will also announce the name of the person who's saying this. Okay, so your name will be announced in Manatv, so that's the good news for you. So I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll get started with the consonant sounds. Alright, thank you for tuning in. Have a great day. Bye-bye.